Welcome to Combat Theory Presents, a bi-weekly podcast about all things martial arts, fight science, and combat sports. Your host is Paul, the evil Professor Antonelli, and our newest episode starts right now.
All right, guys, what is up? We are joined today back to back with another guest. Rich must be incredibly excited. We have today Mitchell Chamale. Mitchell is the CEO of Combat Night. He is a professional fighter that is currently contracted with one championship. He is an event consultant for Karate Combat and obviously a lifelong martial artist. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys doing?
We're excited to have a guest because we promised people for like a year that we would have a guest, and then we never had a guest, and now back to back, Felicia Spencer last episode, Mitchell this episode.
Saves me from talking for like 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
So.
Sometimes I just stare at Rich and I'm like, what else do you have to say, Rich? We have another 20 minutes to talk here. So I think, Mitchell, a lot of our listeners are probably going to know about you being the CEO of Combat Night. If you live in Florida, you've inevitably been to a Combat Night show if you're into fight sports. But could you talk a little bit about how you got involved in martial arts, and then obviously how you became a professional fighter, and then ultimately what led you to being involved in the formation of Combat Night?
All right. I think like most guys that are in fighting, they probably grew up doing it, whether it's getting beat up by your older brother, which I did. I got beat up by my older brother a lot, and I give him all the praise for the reason why I am as tough as I am and why I became a fighter. My dad, too, beat the shit out of me as well, but I don't give him any praise.
Unfair fight.
Yeah. So I grew up, I started wrestling in high school at Marlboro High School, a little small. I think we had a graduating class of like 90 people. I was the second person to make it to the state tournament, and that whole shebang thing, it was fun. I enjoyed it. After high school, there was nothing. There was no wrestling to do. There was just, work and college. Whenever I went to college, I found a judo class. And through the judo class, I found a kid named Matt Ng who did jiu-jitsu. And after class, he would stick around and show me. He would choke me and tell me how bad I sucked. And I was like, yo, where are you doing this jiu-jitsu at? He's like, man, I'm learning on YouTube. Ironically enough, I mean, nowadays we make fun of guys that learn their jiu-jitsu on YouTube, but Matt was very good. He was very technical, and it wasn't just like crazy just grappling. It was like technical. So I worked with him for a couple of months, ended up going to a local school called World Vibe. It was very much like what it sounds like, World Vibe. It was smoking weed, and I didn't smoke weed. I didn't do anything like that, but I trained, and I watched everyone else smoke weed. And then eventually I realized, like, man, I want to do this. Like, I want to be more serious about this. And I heard there was a guy named Josh Saman who had a gym in town that was doing MMA, and if you wanted to fight, you needed to go train with Josh. So I stumbled into his gym. There was like 10 or 12 of us knuckleheads in there, and we beat each other up every day. We'd go to the gym, we'd spar. There was no learning, there was no nothing. It was just beating everybody up every day. And one day, shortly after, I would say maybe a month later, he said, "Hey man, you want to take a pro fight?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to take a pro fight. That sounds like fun. I get paid." And he was like, "Yeah, you're gonna get paid to fight." I'm gonna be honest. He didn't call it a pro fight. He said, "You want to get paid to fight." I didn't realize I was a pro until about 3 fights in. And being honest,
I'm a professional.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back then you're fighting in, Georgia Pavilion. Richard Cox was actually the matchmaker for the events we were fighting for. I signed up for a fight. I was supposed to fight in, I want to say, November of that year. That fight didn't pan out because the kid hit himself in the face with a post hole digger.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up doing a card in Tallahassee where I was going to college at. I fought a kid who had like 6 or 7 fights and amateur fights. He had no pro fights. And that was my pro debut, literally 3 months after I started doing like real MMA. And I did a second fight. I won again. And then on my third fight, I got a call from a guy named Paul Dominich, who people probably don't know who he is nowadays, but he's a real OG in the sport. Back in the day, he was pretty much getting everybody.
He runs Atlas fights, right?
He runs Atlas fights still. They do a couple fights a year. He's more of a real estate agent nowadays. Paul hit me up and said, "Hey, man, do you want to fight for Bellator?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm getting offered a professional fight. I was like, holy cow, I didn't think this was going to happen so soon.
Yeah.
I called Josh and I was like, yo, I just got offered a pro fight. He's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I just got offered a pro fight. And he's like, bro, you're 2-0 as a pro. And that's how I found out.
You're like, oh, I am a pro
athlete.
That's awesome.
Oh, wow.
So, and then, I mean, everything, you know, I did that. I fought a kid named Brian Eckstein, who was, at the time, he was 5-0, Matt Brown's #1 sparring partner. He was supposed to be the next big thing in the UFC. Unfortunately, he had a really bad brain injury during a fight and didn't end up making it. But I lost that fight. And when I lost that fight, I realized, okay, I can't just be going to the gym every day and getting beat up. I need some real training. So I heard about Cowboy Cerrone was offering people to come stay with him at his ranch in New Mexico.
Okay.
So I hit him up. He invited me out. I went out there. I lived with him for a couple of months, off and on. I went back and forth and realized, you know, I'm in there sparring with guys like Damasio Page, Clay Guida, getting my ass handed to me for the most part. But I'm in there still, and I'm getting the work. I'm getting better. And that's when I say I really became a professional athlete. That's when I learned, like, okay, I got back to Tallahassee. I need to go to a real gym. Josh and all the guys were mad at me. They're like, oh, you're leaving our gym. Like, I didn't leave the gym. I just started training elsewhere, too, where there was some structure. Alliance BJJ, actually.
Okay, sure.
Zekro's Academy in Tallahassee. Got some really good technique up there. Learned jiu-jitsu really well. And I wanted to, like, I pumped the brakes at that point. I was like, man, I need to really figure this out and do this the right way if I want to be a professional athlete. I was going to go to law school. I said, fuck law school. I'm going to focus on fighting for 2 years, and I'm going to see where this brings me. And about a year into that, my mother got really sick, and whenever she got really sick, I needed something to focus on. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to take another fight. Like, I'm going to go ahead and just get in camp, and I'm going to take another fight. And at the same time, and all this was happening, Josh and I started Combat Night, literally at the same time when I was taking that next pro fight. My mom was sick. We went to a Rise of a Warrior event, Dan Donaldson down in Fort Pierce. Same place we have the event this Saturday. And while we were there, we were recording a guy named Ralph Valdez. And on the way back, me and Josh were talking about, you know, man, like, we need something like that. Like, that's a real event. The events we had been fighting on were in pavilions. They were outdoor. They were in barns. You know, I remember walking out and, like, mud getting all over my shoes and my feet because it's raining. So after Dan's event, we realized, like, okay, we're going to try something like that. We're going to do it. Okay. And that's how Combat Night started. Literally, I got a piece of a ripped envelope that has our business plan written on it. It has, like, every fighter we wanted to put on, sponsors, where we thought we could have it, Richard Cox can be our matchmaker. Yeah. And Combat Night was born on a car ride, 2 guys, you know, driving back from an event.
What year was your first event?
2012.
2012.
Yep.
And how many events have you had since then, roughly?
I think we're officially on event number 168 right now. But the way the state does it, every pro event we have is technically 2 events. It's 2 separate events.
Because you do the amateur event first, then the pro event. And although that feels like one day, that on paper, that is 2 events.
On paper, it's 2 events. So if we're looking at it like that, we're well over 200 at this point.
No kidding. Okay. That's quite a journey. What do you think the average, how many fights does the average promoter put on in their career, would you say?
The average promoter probably does somewhere between 25 and 50.
And that's it.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Because they're doing 3 to 4 a year on average. And then I think a lot of them get burnt out. I think a lot of them can't cut it. This is a very hard business to be in.
What I notice is you're really good at juggling a lot of different hats, but I notice a lot of these other promoters, they have, like, a full-time job. Some of them own gyms, which is like another full-time job. So it's really hard for them to really find the time to plan out a year of events, North Florida, Central Florida, South Florida. And that's why I just don't think they can compete with the numbers, because obviously your #1 goal is promoting.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there is nothing else I want to do in my life. I have found my calling. So I quit everything else. When I first started this, I was working at bodybuilding.com. As a broke fighter, I was filling supplement orders. And the damaged goods I was selling to the guys in the gym. Okay. So, like, that's actually how Combat Night was funded. I was very good at saving money, so I just saved all my money from, like, selling broke supplements and from making at bodybuilding.com. And I still had a job for probably 3 years. I don't think it's feasible to, start any business without some kind of guaranteed income on the side. I think you just recently did the same thing, right? You had a job and
Yeah, I was working in restaurants like I have most of my time growing up. So it was like part-time restaurant, part-time promoter, but just recently got into full-time promoting.
Yep.
So I'm learning that it's not an instant success, right? Like I'm 2 years into promoting my show, and there's so much room for potential, but to get there, you have to like just think of this one thing. You can't put other things in front of it.
100%. At one point, I think until probably year 4 or 5, I owned roughly 5 businesses. I mean, they're small businesses, stupid stuff, Spats.
Shout out Ninja Grappling Spats. I
Ninja
still wear them.
Grappling Spats is one of them.
Okay.
And
I
my
have a
hands-
custom pair of Coach Grindle grappling spats because of this guy.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd never want to see you in those.
Oh, dude,
Thank you
they
so
look
much.
great. They look great.
Oh man.
I fill them out real good these days.
Oh, good Lord. So obviously you have a family. You're a family man. You have 2 young children.
Yep.
You are actively promoting Combat Night. You fought in one championship in the last year, 2 years ago.
I think it's been a year and a half.
Been a
maybe.
year. So you're still actively training, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find the time to juggle all those things?
I don't.
Okay.
There's not time for all of it. I just find a way to make it happen. My number one priority is my family. Without a doubt, my favorite hat to wear and the one that I wear proudly everywhere I go is being a dad. I have thankfully found a way to include them in my training, include them in my business. If you come to a combat night, I'm holding my baby girl, I'm holding my son. They're walking around with me. The last thing that I wanted was to be away because I do travel a lot for work. And I didn't want to make it something that my kids couldn't be a part of. So that's why the vibe is different at our events. We're not trying to, all the machismo and
It's
all
not
the,
rowdy.
Nah, we're not trying to have. And if you want to be rowdy, like we'll throw you out. Like it's not what we're doing at our events.
It's happened. I've been
Yeah.
there.
My girl came to the last event because I worked it and she kind of wanted to see what I do. And I was like, I'll come to the event. And I remember like after a while, I was sitting down and I was kind of like, oh, that's so-and-so's son. That's so-and-so's daughter. Because really it's your family, but then there's also other families that also work. So it is a big kind of family affair.
It is.
What have been like some of the challenges that you've faced as a promoter, or what are the things that you didn't really expect that would come up that have come up?
Damn near everything. I mean, every event that we have, there's a new surprise, there's a new challenge. But I love that. That's probably my favorite part. That's why I think I love what I'm doing, because it's not the same thing every day. I'm not just, I'm not walking and doing the same exact thing every single day. It's every day it's something new. It's a surprise. I don't know what that new is going to be. In the moment, it's stressful, and I'm not a big fan of whatever it is, because usually it's someone else forgetting something or someone else not doing something or doing the wrong thing, and then our team or me having to fix it. But that's really, that's like the surprises is what keeps it interesting and makes me want to do it.
Now you primarily do events in Florida, but you've done events in Georgia as well with Combat Night.
Yes.
And then as an event consultant, you've done international events as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. What is, when you talk about your team, could you give us an idea of how many people roughly that is, or kind of give me an idea of how many people you're working with in these events?
Currently we're about 20 people.
Okay.
It was at one point in time, there was really just like 5 of us.
Yeah.
It was really the core group. I would say like the 3 Musketeers are me, Ramsey, and Richard.
Okay.
They really started, since the very beginning. Ramsey came to record. He was doing a documentary on his little brother, and his brother was fighting for us, and he caught this knockout that no one else caught. Like, our video guy was very much doing it as a favor, and he caught this crazy knockout, actually, of a guy who's fighting this Saturday. And like 2 weeks later, I was so mad this knockout didn't get caught. I'm playing around on YouTube, and I see the knockout, and I'm like, whose video is this?
Why do we have this?
Yeah, so I reached out to the guy, Ramsey, and I was like, yo, man, do you want to start like being our video guy? And he's like, yeah, that's awesome. How much does it pay? And I was like, well, nothing. I was like, it pays a handshake
You
and a
can
hug,
go to
buddy.
the event for free, though.
Yeah, you get the best view in the house. Thankfully, he's very passionate about video and MMA, so he jumped on board. And then eventually, we gave him a big raise to $150, and then after that, I went to $300, and it kept going up, And but me, Ramsey, and Richard were the original guys, and then Angel Marquez, one of my best friends, he came on board and was a big part of it. And there's been, slowly but surely, more and more people have come on board. Brandy became a part of it. Obviously, she's my wife. And at this point now we're at 20. Ramsey's whole family's involved. Like Ramsey's, all his kids are, and I'm gonna be honest, they do better camera work than some professionals that are working for Fight Pass. Like you go watch a Fight Pass and you see the camera work and it's like shaking and moving, and it's like, nah, go watch our pay-per-view. These kids, they grew up in it, So
you support child labor, is what you're saying.
1,000% I support child
I
labor.
worked as a kid, and I'm all for it to a point, depending on the work. But these kids don't disenjoy their job; they actually have a great time.
I mean, that's a cool. Listen, though, bro. Like my girl worked in a fish butcher when she was like in her teens. I worked in a restaurant. Being a camera guy for a professional fight organization is
one of the best jobs as a child, or an adult.
Yeah.
So that's something that I always think about when I think of Combat Night. Is when I started as a competitor first and then a coach. One of the best things about putting our guys on Combat Night shows was you get your fight filmed and it gets put online, so you get to actually review your fight. That seems so simple. Like every promotion should do that, but very few, even to this day, very few promotions do that. Was that like a strategy that you thought would grow Combat Night as a whole, or was it just happenstance?
Yeah, it wasn't a strategy on purpose. One thing that me and Josh did was we talked about the events we had fought on. We had fought on all the events. Bellator, we fought on Bellator. He fought in the UFC. There's things that I don't like about the UFC to this day. There's things that I don't like about Bellator to this day. And all those things that we didn't like about the other promotions, we put them on a piece of paper and we said, we're not doing that shit. Like, we're not going to do that. Everything we did like, we're stealing all of this. Like, we're going to steal every bit of this. Yeah. So, there's a couple fights that I have. I fought a guy named Juan Puerta, who is, I think he's a top unsigned flyweight in the world right now. He's from Colombia. Amazing fight. It's probably one of my favorite fights. I have no footage of it.
Yeah.
None. I beat this kid. This is my first fight after my mom passed away. It was 2 weeks after my mom died, and it meant a lot to me. And I have no footage of this moment. I mean, there's literally a dope moment where I'm trying to like talk to the crowd. I'm trying to dedicate this fight to my mom, and I have the mic, and I'm like, I just want to dedicate this fight to my mom, and I'm like tearing up and I'm crying, and the crowd's like, boo, boo, a bunch of guys in Georgia, and finally I'm like trying to talk, and I keep hearing the boos. I'm like, hey, you know what? Fuck you. If you're from Georgia, fuck you. And I start walking around the cage, and Josh is like, give me the mic. And I'm like, fuck you. And then like ripping the mic out of my hand. I would love to have that moment.
That would crush. If anyone somehow is listening,
has that video
has
somewhere.
A video.
Somebody at home has a video of Mitchell walking around effing off the audience. Yeah.
So like I was saying, like that seems so simple, so smart, and I really believe that's what helped you guys grow so fast. Compared to these other, I remember fighting for shows and having to pay $50, but you just get a DVD of your fight. It's no one like, and then that's just crazy to me. So
I don't have to. I mean, not to cut you off.
Yeah,
but like I don't have like. Are we in a roundabout way making money off the athletes? Sure. I don't have to actually make money off the athlete. Like I don't need him to buy a T-shirt from me. I don't need him to buy a pair of gloves from me. You guys know, you've been at my events. You can walk around. You can walk into any gym in the state of Florida, and you will see a fighter wearing Combat Night gear. It might be a shirt. It might be a rash guard. It might be shorts. It might be all three. I
got a bag in my car, Combat Night bag.
I mean, to me, it's like that's another thing. Like I just want to take care of the fighters, and I think having footage of their fights, having free gear, like all these things are just taking care of the athletes. And that to me is a no-brainer. I mean, it's so crazy. The things that we do at Combat Night.
I mean, just my keychain, right? Yep. Like Combat Night, you got Combat Night keychains. Like, that's what I was wondering is like, is this all strategized of just like, let's put our name out there as much as possible? Is this like a branding like overload like a lot of companies do? Or are you legitimately just trying to supply? Because that's what I noticed too is like you do give out a lot of stuff, especially to the fighters.
I wish there was a strategy there.
Like you had thought that through. Like we thought about that.
Just put our name everywhere on everything.
There was no strategy. The strategy was, again, I remember I fought in a show in Georgia, and I got paid $300 and $300 to choke out their hometown boy and put him to sleep in front of everybody and get booed again. And after the show, I'm getting paid by the promoter, my $600 pay. And I said, hey man, you mind if I get a shirt? Like, where can I get a shirt? I said, where can I get a shirt at? And he's like, oh, the merch booth's over there. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, you mind if I just grab one? And he's like, yeah, they're $20.
Yeah.
$20? You just paid me $600 to risk my life, you son of a bitch. Yeah. I was so mad, but that was the thing that was on our list. That was on my list. Like, I'm not making a fighter pay for a shirt.
we've talked about it so much. Like there's certain things in combat sports that we like hail, like championship belts. That's like number one.
Shirts.
And then shirts is like number two.
Listen,
like everyone loves
can I
getting
get
a free shirt.
Like it's the hierarchy of martial arts things that you care about. Do you have a belt? Did you get a shirt from that event? Or like in Muay Thai, like, oh, I got the Muay Thai shorts from that.
Yeah.
That's like
And then
10.
you guys go above and beyond. You do gloves, you do Thai shorts, you do. And for fighters, like it's so expensive when you're dedicating your whole life to fighting that like we said, like having those part-time jobs, that just pays the bills for a lot of these guys. They don't have that extra money to give out on gear.
I think that there are obviously a lot of promoters and a lot of promotions in Florida in general, right? I think we talked about this the other day. There's probably 13 governing bodies that are doing amateur events in the state of Florida. What do you think are the things that separate, Combat Night from these other organizations?
Everything. I mean, there's literally not. If there's something that people can say, oh, I saw that at that event too. It's like, nah, you didn't. You might think you saw it, but I promise you, everything is different about us. From the way we treat the fighters, the way we communicate with our fighters, the way we put our fights together, the way we run our fight cards, everything. You can't walk into, there's literally nobody working and with us that doesn't have some kind of fight experience, doesn't have some kind of like martial arts experience, hasn't walked into a gym, doesn't understand what it's like for a fighter to go through an 8-week camp. To me, that's the biggest thing, is being able to relate to these athletes, because, I can't tell you how many times I've had some guy in a fucking suit look at me and be like, you need to fight with, guys fight with everything you got, leave it all out there. And it's like, what the fuck do you know? Like, don't sit here and tell me what I need to do. I remember when we fought on the card together. Did we fight on that card together? The kickboxing card? The Muay Thai?
I think so, yeah.
I remember I was the first fight of the night on this card, and they ran the fighters meeting late. So, like, I'm on the state's ass. And they'll tell you, Tim, all the guys at the state will tell you, I'm on their ass every week. I'm having conversations with the state. When I get my list of judges and referees, I don't go, okay, thank you. I go, whoa. This judge, 2 events ago, we had him, and he scored like 3 or 4 fights opposite of the other judges. Why is he back on my thing? I don't like this judge, and I don't think the fighters like this judge. I'm paying these guys. Let's see what we can do to get a better judge, a better ref, or whatever the case might be. I'm always lobbying to make sure we have the best people in our building. So, for me, that's a big one. Like, I'm just thinking of the fighters all the time. I'm communicating with the state. I'm not just, a lot of promoters, especially the pro promoters, just let the state run their show. It's like, nah.
I was going to say, it seems like such a simple thing. Like, this is what I'm paying for. I should be able to have a say. To where a lot of these other promoters are just like, okay, I paid for it. Hopefully it works out.
Yeah, that's
because they don't have that foresight of like, how else can I make this a better show?
Yep, that's not me. I mean, everything to me, Paul. Like, I really do. I spend so much time and effort and energy making sure that everything goes right. Even, you can ask my team, man, if I say the show's starting at 4:15 and it starts at 4:16, it is scorched earth. I am losing my mind. Why is Miles not in the cage right now announcing? If something's not going right, if a fighter's not, on deck, ready to walk, I'm going and talking to Jada. If it doesn't, whatever it is like, I'm running that show. I don't sit back and sit by the cage with a beer and drink and enjoy myself on an event night. That's, to me, the busiest night. That's the most important night of, I'm in control of 50 guys' happiness. I'm in control of, making this a great experience for them. And then also after the fighters, because the fighters are my number one concern, then I have 2,000 people in the building. I'm in control of their happiness. I got to make sure that they're happy at the end of the night.
I think Rich will take offense to this, but Rich and I had this conversation in South Carolina, where I'm older. I'm a lot older than Rich is, right? And I was saying that, like, for me, the way you dress, it changes people's perception of you. And Rich is younger. He's a little more punk than I am. He's like, fuck that, right? But, like, I remember my first impression of your fights as a coach was that, unlike a lot of other promoters, you were dressed nicely for an event. You dressed like a professional for the event. And I remember going, oh, like, this guy, like, he actually dressed up nice for this. That's nice. Because sometimes you see promoters that are wearing, like, whatever, know. I think one of the things that we stole from you, unfortunately, is, like, Rich has a kind of a rule of, we don't cancel events, and he's like, oh, this is something I got from Combat Night. How important do you think it is to never cancel an event? Because I know that you've taken probably losses on events before, right?
For sure. I mean, everyone knows. Well, everyone locally knows about the pandemic event. We had every show in the state, every show in the world canceled. There was not a single event happening on the day that we had our event. I think it was March 21st of 2020. A week prior, they shut everything down, and they had these strict regulations about only 50 people allowed in the building. Other promoters were calling me like, "Why haven't you canceled your show yet? People are giving us shit about Combat Night. Said they're not canceling. Why are y'all canceling?" And I was like, well, because we're not. Like, I'm not going to cancel. Like, you're going to have to cancel your show. You can be as hard-headed as you want, but you're going to cancel your show. Cool, buddy. We didn't cancel our show. Like, it just, to me, if I can make it happen, if I gave my word to a bunch of guys that they're going to get paid, to my team that they're going to get paid, they're going to get paid. I don't do an event and hope that I sell enough tickets that I'm able to make the event happen. I don't do an event unless I have the money in my bank account. And if something were to go wrong and I didn't make a single dime, everyone's still going to get paid.
Yeah.
And to me, being a man of your word is like, at the end of the day, that's all you got. My dad, that's one thing my dad did teach me that was really valuable and I've held on to, is that if it comes out of you can control what comes out of your mouth. So if it comes out of your mouth, you better deliver on it. So that's how I feel about these events. If I open my mouth and I say we're having an event and there's anything I can do to make sure it happens, I'm going to make sure it happens. I mean, I was literally, I don't think I slept that weekend for the pandemic show. I was on the phone with the fire marshal, the mayor's office. They called me and told me Saturday, the morning of the event, hey, we just got word that you're having an event today. What are you thinking? And I was like, well, what's the regulation says I can have up to 50 people in a building, correct? Yes, sir. But how are you going to do an event? Okay, there'll be less than 50 people. Well, the fire marshal's going to come out and he's going to monitor that. Cool, send him out. What's his name? I'll meet him at the door.
Now there'll be 49 people in the building.
Yep. I mean, and we did it. We pulled it off.
Yeah.
We were able to make it happen.
You ended up getting a lot of national attention, and the UFC even said that the reason that they were able to start doing shows was because of Combat Night, right?
Well, they came to Florida based off of that because they had a show planned in Tampa they were trying to do, and Tampa had just canceled the WWE, the WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, we ain't going to Tampa. And then the Florida Boxing Commission's like, well, there was a local show that just did an event in Jacksonville, so maybe the city of Jacksonville will let it happen. And Mayor Linney used to be the boxing commissioner, so
Nice.
He's a big fan of combat sports. So everything ended up working out, and they were able to have their event.
Yeah, like you said, regionally, a lot of people remember that happening. Like you said, he got national attention, but I really remember when events started happening again. Obviously, Florida, we opened up pretty quick. So when events started happening again, talking to these other coaches and fighters, like that was the talk of the town. Every event I went to, it was, now we're in South Florida, but we're still talking about that Jacksonville show you guys put on. So even though it probably cost you guys a lot of physical work and labor, and you didn't make the money off of attendance and stuff, you guys pulling that show off really, I think, kept the morale up in the state. It was like such an iconic event that happened.
It's crazy too. You look at that event and you think about who fought on it. Stephen Koslow, Trey Waters, Ramon Tavares, like Shelby Corinne, like, Val Woodburn. All these guys are in the UFC.
Yeah, just like 2 years later, 3 years later.
Now imagine if they didn't get to fight on that show and they all had one less pro fight.
Yeah.
Would they be in the UFC right now? Maybe. I'm not here to say they would or they wouldn't be, but every fight matters, every win matters, and I knew that going into that, and I didn't know when those guys would get a chance to make money again. I didn't know when they would get a chance. A lot of them had lost their jobs.
Yeah.
They were calling. I was getting calls every single day from these guys. Are you sure we're gonna fight? Do you swear? Are you promise? I'm like, I promise you, man, you're fighting. I promise you're fighting. Lucas Alexander was supposed to be on that card. So there was Preston Parsons was supposed to be on that card. So if everyone had made it to the dance, some guys waited to the last minute to get their medicals.
Yeah.
And the state was like, nah, you're not adding anything. They don't have their medicals. That's their fault. So, but if everyone had made it to the dance, there would have been literally 7 future UFC fighters on that card.
Combat Night's seen obviously a lot of really memorable moments. You guys have been doing events, since 2012, obviously, so that's 10 plus years of events. Could you share with me some of the moments that kind of stick out in your head? Whether it be exciting moments or even moments that you were shocked or surprised?
One moment that sticks out to me a lot would be Kat Nelson at the Caribe Royale. She knocked out her opponent and the lights went out.
Lights out Nelson, yeah.
That's how she got her nickname. That's a really big, memorable moment for me for multiple reasons because I was not happy. In the moment, I was mad. There was the lighting, there's a plug for it doesn't matter what your lighting is. There's a plug somewhere.
Yeah.
And I specifically told the camera, not Ramsey, another camera guy, do not set up near this area. This is a very important, whatever area. So when the lights go out, I look over the area And like, the event's happening. Like he ended up setting up there anyways.
Yeah.
And I look, and he's like looking around like, oh, whoa, shit.
Man.
He plugged in his cell phone and knocked out the cord. So I run over there.
Oh my God.
I run over there, and it gets put back in, and I'm like, yo, I lose my mind. Scorched earth. You can imagine what I'm doing, right? So
I mean, that caused her to have a no contest,
Right.
even though she basically had a beautiful knockout that probably would have been highlight reel. But long term, you got USA Today coverage on that one.
Yeah.
She became a national name for a couple weeks in the news. Like,
she got a ton of exposure over it.
Yeah.
She got a cool nickname that she still has to this day. So like that was a really cool moment. Another one would be our first event at the Civic Center in Tallahassee. We put over 5,000 people up there. The city of Tallahassee kicked us out of our venue. They had just built a brand new place called Cascades Park, and we secured the venue. We were going to do an outdoor event in an outdoor amphitheater. Really dope park. We were so excited. And then like 2 weeks away from it, a city commissioner wrote an editorial about us, referred to us as human cockfighting. I'm like, This is 2016. I'm like, what's going on here, old man? And anyways, they kicked us out of the venue. And so on 2 weeks' notice, we had to find a new venue that could hold all these people. And the Civic Center happened to be available. So we got the Civic Center, and we literally put just over 5,000 people in there. Huge event. I think it was our 50th event. It was our 50th anniversary or 50th show anniversary. And it was just dope, man. We had a guy fight on there. It was a veteran. Really, really dope moment. He wins his fight. Last like 2 seconds. It was such a close fight. The fight was back and forth. And then he ends up winning with like 2 seconds left, gets a TKO. Josh jumps in, picks him up, carries him around the ring, and it's like it was an iconic moment for us, and I think for the city of Tallahassee too. He's a really well known local up there, so it's like, those two moments to me are probably some of the bigger moments. But there's so many moments, Paul. And most of it's not happening inside of the cage. Mm-hmm. A lot of it are these guys. We've had lawyers and doctors and cops and firefighters and moms and dads that will never, Shelly Lopez in Tallahassee, she's a mom and she wanted to fight, get one more fight in. And after her fight, just having these people come up to me and thanking me and saying like, oh man, you don't know what this means. And like knowing that we're like providing this moment for them, like we're providing this opportunity to have that moment. They obviously did the work to earn it and get it, but providing that platform for it to happen on, those are the big moments to me. Like some things that, people might never see, but it's really cool to have people coming up to you and thanking you and for being a part of those moments.
I've got to experience a lot of that as a fighter. I fought on your show a couple times. I think I only won once, but as a coach, when I went to other promotions,
you fought studs too, though. You also fought.
Well,
studs,
I never turned a fight down. So that was my thing.
Coming to combat night, you're not fighting. You're fighting studs.
Well, there was one of them that I won. He was not a stud, but shout out to him. But
he was listening for a moment, thinking like, "That's right, I'm a stud." And then you just shot that man down.
I mean, just look at the record.
Oh.
But anyways, I had a lot of those moments as a coach, right? Like, as a coach, you get to develop these fighters, and you see a lot of the behind-the-scenes things that you're talking about. And then also on the other end, you get the very low-light kind of moments where, maybe you worked your way up to a title shot, and then you lose it.
Yeah.
Maybe you lose it devastatingly. I think of those moments as a coach. My coach mindset always goes to, like, the worst things. That way we can learn from it. But as like the emotional happy ones, as a coach, I don't really get to reflect on those too much, because normally after you fight, you got what's the next fight? What's the next fight? So as a promoter, I've kind of felt that experience too. Like, oh, this team crushed at this event. That was great. And then it's like, I don't really get time to reflect on it. You got to move on to the next thing. Yep. So you probably don't realize how much you impact a lot of these competitors' lives. Like you said, their families' lives, things of that nature. And I feel that you care about that more than a lot of these other promoters, because I don't necessarily think they see it through that lens, because you came from a fighting background. You experienced those lows and those highs.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I notice on the outside is like the difference between you as a promoter compared to others is like you really think about those behind the scenes little intricate details in every little thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's you can catch me a lot of times in the back. If I talk to a guy, I'll go back and talk to the loser, the guy who lost, and I've talked to many guys and girls in tears that are, crying about, the outcome of the fight, or, however they lost. And to me, those are really important moments to me too, man, because I know every single night, if I have a card with 20 people on it, or 20 fights, I know that 20 of those guys just got one step further away from their dream. Mm-hmm. And I know how bad that sucks. That's a really bad feeling. And the same, I know 20 people got one step closer to their dream, but I care about all of them, whether they got closer or further away from their dream, and I want to make sure that they know that. So yeah, I've had those heart-to-heart conversations, those rough ones as well, and yeah, it's rough, man. It really is.
I know that Rich actually made a list of all of the kind of the big fighters that came out of Combat Night that now fight in the UFC,
Mm-hmm.
won championship. Obviously, you have people in PFL, you have people in Invicta. So, Rich, could you kind of give us that?
Well, if we're being honest here, I did come up with a list, and I spent some time kind of like going off my knowledge and research, and then I messaged it to Mitchell, and he's like, "Oh, cool list. Here's mine," and it's actually much bigger.
Do you have that off the top of your head, or
not off the top of the head, but it is written down.
Oh, do you want to go give me a who's list?
So
here?
I don't want to say who's because I don't want to make any other careers seem everyone's different. But
rattle that out there.
Some recognizable names. We got Jim Ehlers, Jillian Robertson, Phil Rowe, Preston Parkins, Lucas Alexander, Koslow, Austin Lane. A lot of these guys, are coming out of the Jacksonville area, but obviously they cross-train other places too. But I really see those names that I just kind of mentioned there. Obviously, Ehlers is more of an OG of the sport here in Florida.
Best friend.
But it was like, again, because I'm from this area, we had very few fighters come out of Florida, very few fighters that are like Florida fighters. They're not out of ATT, right?
Jacksonville had zero.
And then now we see an explosion out of Jacksonville, and I feel like we're getting the start of an explosion out of Orlando again.
We are.
And I think you started, your first fights were where?
Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm. When did you go into like Duval?
Well, we went to Jacksonville second because Jacksonville was a guy named Roberto Cotero was our MMA coach. We were driving over there, and we were literally every weekend we would go to Jacksonville to train with Roberto. Rob from McDojo Life we were talking about earlier. Sure. Rob was training under Roberto, and we would go train for the weekend. And there were guys like Jacob Brunel, Caveman, Dean Grant. There's so many OGs out there in Jacksonville. There's some really good training. There were some events, but the events weren't very good. And then we decided let's do an event out there. And let me tell you, I absolutely hated Jacksonville. We made no money. We probably did 12 events, and between the 12 events, we might have made $2,000 put together. We just weren't making money there. The kids were scrappy. We had guys who wanted to fight. It was fun, but Jacksonville was almost made us not even want to go anywhere else. Let's just stay in Tallahassee. Let's not go anymore because trying to travel because all the local promoters were hating hard on us. At one point we had a local promoter make a fake Facebook group, fake Facebook profiles. He went hard.
This guy went
full
deep.
troll.
This guy went deep.
Full troll.
Five fighters. So on weigh-in day, we lost 5 fights. We went from 12
because of stuff he sent out
to 7 because they were all fake. They were fake fighters.
Wow.
He made them up.
And this is this is back 2013. This isn't as easy to verify.
Not that I agree with this, but what a move.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, that is.
That is maniacal.
It was.
Yeah.
Is this guy alive still?
But unfortunately for him, the only one of those people that we lost was the actual ticket seller.
Yeah.
And we rematched him the same day. Our boy Tim Lopez stepped up to fight Zach Elkins, who was at 205. He came up from 170, drove from Ocala after he worked his shift on Saturday, fought Zach Elkins, and beat him in his hometown.
Wow.
So, I mean, we have, like I say, the amount of tomfoolery and fuckery we've dealt with at Combat Night is no joke. And, thank God we stuck around in Jacksonville. We talked about not coming back to Jacksonville multiple times. And it was the guys like Ramon Tavares. It was guys like Stephen Koslow. It was the Preston Parsons. Those are the reason. They're the reason that we stuck around there. And they dealt with some crap, too. We had some shitty venues. I remember we got to a venue one day. There was no lighting. The electric didn't work. And it's day of the event. It was horrible. But guess what? Preston Parsons fought on that card, won a title on that card. It's these guys stuck with us. So I mean, I got a ton of love for the Duval kids, Duval guys. They're the real ones.
So go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
I was just gonna say, you're saying they showed you love, so now you're trying to show them love by sticking with them because they stuck with you. For a lot of fighters, I don't think this is something they can take in consideration because there's so much that goes into fighting, right?
There is.
But relationship building with promotions. I feel like that's such a miss because maybe the coaches aren't leading their fighters that way, or the fighters just, for whatever reason, want to curve, sticking with one place over another. How do you feel that, fighters, obviously you're a promotion that wants people to fight for you, but how do you feel overall for fighters building relationships with promoters?
I mean, that's, to me, that relationship. Again, now, I'll also say that most promoters don't allow you to build that relationship. They're not looking to communicate with fighters every day. They don't, and I get it. I understand. It's hard. It's difficult. I'm, just today alone, I've probably had 30 conversations with athletes easily between Facebook, Instagram.
If you guys don't see it, Mitchell's got 2 phones next to him, not one. He's got 2 phones.
I spend
Not on camera.
Not on camera.
It takes a lot of time. It does. It takes a lot of time to have these relationships with all these athletes, and I do think that most promoters don't want to have those relationships. They don't want them. They don't have the time for them. But I think it's very important. I think it's probably the most important relationship that you can create. And you don't have to talk to me every day. You don't have to. I'm not asking. I don't want that. Do not call me every day. I swear. Don't do
100 fighters just said, I should message Mitchell more.
I'm gonna go ahead and start talking to him more.
Let me
Don't
text
do
Mitchell
that
right now. It's late.
Yeah.
But if you have a question, you need some advice, my ears are always open. My messages are always open. But yeah, I think that a lot of promoters don't provide that. But for the guys that do take advantage of it, you see guys like Ramon Tavares, Steven Koslow, Trey Waters, Preston Parsons. They're all in the UFC. Val Woodburn. I have Austin Lane. I have great relationships with these guys where if they have a question, if they don't feel like something's being done right or they're being mistreated or a manager isn't doing the right thing for them, they can hit me up and I'm gonna give them the truth. I'm gonna tell them my honest opinion and they know they can trust that. I've been around the sport for so long. The wisdom you can get from a good promoter or a good manager or a good coach is just invaluable. And when it comes time to go pro, there's only, we do 8 pro fights a year. We try to put 12 on every card. If I can put 12 pro fights on a card, that's the limit the state allows is 12. If I can do 12, I'll do 12 every time. But normally we get away with 10. So that's 80 pro fights from us alone. That's 160 pro slots. So there's 400 and something pro fighters in the state of Florida. So just with us, there's only going to be 160 guys that get a spot, and most of those guys are going to fight 2 or 3 times. Because if you're fighting with us, if you're our OG, we're going to put you in the cage as often as we can. That's the goal. That's another benefit of sticking with the promotion is now they want to work with you. Because when Val Woodburn first fought with us, he was a heavyweight. He didn't sell any tickets. He didn't know how to talk on the mic, and he'll tell you all these things. You know what I mean? He came up to me after he did a press conference for the UFC. And as soon as he came off the stage, he runs over and he hugs me and he's like, "You don't know how much you helped me so that I could talk like that and I could be up there so comfortable." And we did a press conference for the guys, and some people thought it was silly, but the experience that these guys get by doing that. And how did you get to be a part of the press conference? Do you think I picked the guy that's never fought for me before?
No.
Nah.
Yeah.
I picked the guys that show up, the guys that want to be a part of our events, that always want to fight for us. So yeah, I think it's super valuable, man. If whatever promotion you're going to fight for, you should look at it as a business. What can that promotion do for you in the future? What are they doing for you? Are they giving you content to promote yourself? Are they giving you marketing tools like posters that are nice that you can go show a sponsor and go, "Hey, you want to sponsor me?" The last thing I want to do if I'm a fighter, because I was a fighter, is go show them a poster that the promoter made and it looks like a 3rd grader made it. Well, you think a sponsor that's running a business, a reputable business with a good logo, and they do good marketing, they're going to look at that poster and be like, I think my money's spent better elsewhere. So we try to make sure that we have those tools for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one for me. I know, again, I grew some of the Orlando fighters that I coached through Combat Night, and that led them to other promotions as well. But just the opportunities. And then, again, if you had fought for you before, you reach out to those guys for last-minute fights. Those are the guys that if someone bails it a week before the fight, I know you're going to look for that fill-in opponent, and it's going to be a fair fight. And that's because we kept such a good relationship with you.
Exactly.
That's being said, how do you do that? And we did an episode on pet peeves, and I messaged you personally. I was like, as a promoter, what are your pet peeves? And I think this would probably help a lot of guys kind of understand how to build a good relationship, because it really doesn't take a lot. You're just kind of supposed to do your job. So I want to kind of give you your pet peeves, and then you give me your thoughts on them. The first one being fighters missing weight.
That's a no-brainer, guys. I said it earlier, being a man of your word. So if you gave your word to another man that you're going to fight him at a certain weight, like, yo, you're getting in a fist fight, and you just agreed to fight him at X weight, 125, 135, 145. Like, just common sense, bro. Be a man. Like, if you can't follow through with what comes out of your mouth, I have a hard time working with you or wanting to see you, like, seeing you, like, do well and get better. And, like, yo, I understand now as amateurs, this is where we learn. All right. If you cut weight and you mess up, okay, cool. This is where we learn, but by the time you're a pro, you should have that dialed in. There's no excuse for a pro to miss weight. There's not an excuse for an amateur to miss weight, but I'm okay. I'm a little more okay with that.
Like you said, you're developing, you're learning. Maybe you drop to a new weight class, you're unsure, you're testing it out. With that
being said, if you miss weight, don't be a douche. Okay? Don't show up 2 hours late. Your paperwork wasn't done, and then you get in front of your opponent and you're talking trash. You should be apologizing. You should be saying, I'm sorry, this won't happen again. What can I do to make this better? Not what can I do to make this worse?
I mean, you guys are great at putting out content on your Instagram, right? And I just saw a video recently where a guy showed up late, didn't make weight. He's talking trash to the fighter, and it turns out he didn't even fight.
He didn't, and he's actually not only my teammate, he's a guy I've known for like 10 years. It's like, there's a certain point where like you're disrespecting me, and you're disrespecting the promotion, you're disrespecting the sport, and it's like, you just common sense, man. You just got to have some common sense. What would you want done to you? Like, would you want that to be how someone treated you? Probably not.
Yeah, I felt like that was just really important when I messaged you for your pet peeves, and I saw your responses. I was like, fighters don't even think promoters are thinking about these things, and it's like on the forefront of their mind.
I know when I was coaching and someone missed weight, I was so embarrassed that because I'm the guy telling the matchmaker, oh yeah, we can make 185. Yeah. And then my guy's not doing all the stuff that he needs to do. And then I'm like, you might quit doing this, but I still work in this industry. I still have to work with that promoter next week. And the next time I tell them, oh yeah, my guy can make 185, they're going to be like, well, your last guy didn't make 185, bro.
Yep. I teach my guys all the time. Your performance, as far as the fight goes, doesn't affect your team. But everything you do before and after that affects your team.
Yep.
So, like, I don't care if you win or lose. Obviously, I want you to win. But I love winning. But, again, win or loss, it doesn't really affect the team. But how you did the weigh-ins, how you, after the fight, did you thank the promoter? Did you go around and kind of be chummy with the judges, the refs, everyone, like, develop a relationship? Because, again, this is not the last time you're fighting for them.
Yeah.
You're going to continue to fight for these guys. And if you luckily get promoted to a higher event, that higher event can look back and like, how were they? I know you stay in contact with a lot of these managers for these higher level guys.
I have a relationship with every management company in the game.
I don't know a single fighter who's come out of your show that hasn't vetted you first about joining a management team, or my manager says I should do this. What do you think?
That's an interesting point, Mitchell. How important do you think it is for a fighter to have a management team?
I think it's very unimportant until you need it.
Okay.
So a lot of guys want to jump into a management company, early. I see amateurs doing it. It's like, no, you're just muddying. They're making it more confusing now. Like, you don't need a manager when you're an amateur. You need to learn how to be a fighter first. Like, you haven't even figured out how to be a fighter, much less a managed fighter. I think once you get to like 5-0, 4-0, and
as a
professional, and there's a chance to start getting looks. And here's what I say too is like, don't bring anyone in your circle with empty hands. And if you're bringing a manager in your circle as an amateur, what can he possibly be bringing you? Like he's bringing those gifts to the pro fighters that are 5-0 and 6-0. So don't bring anyone to your table. If you come into my barbecue, you better bring some macaroni and cheese, and it better not be dry. You know what I mean? Like, don't come. So a lot of these guys get managers because they want to say, "Oh, I'm managed by FRM.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm managed by Iridium." But are you really? Or are you just, or are they just putting, hope this guy works out?
Yeah,
we'll find out in 5 fights. No, get a manager when they can do something for you and they can bring something to the table and it's actually valuable. Because if not, you're just another. Okay, maybe he works out, and if he does work out, awesome.
Yeah. And when you talk about gifts, what exactly like are you saying? Are you talking about sponsorships? Are you talking about that's kind of where you're headed?
Yeah, sponsorships, gear. You know, man, some of these management companies, whenever you make it and you're their guy, they're taking care of you. And I love it. I've seen, I've worked with a few companies and they really do. So that's what I mean. Like if they come to town and they're going to come to Orlando and have dinner with you and talk about your goals and your future and really get to know you as an athlete, or are they just sticking their logo on a picture of you and telling you that you're rep by them? Because that's not a manager. Like if you just got a cool little poster post that says I'm managed, like that's not a manager.
It reminds me when I was younger, all my friends would get sponsored skaters, and they would get like a sticker.
It's like, no, it's not a sponsor. It's like, so definitely bringing stuff to the table, creating opportunities. Are they getting you podcast appearances, helping you speak better in life? Are they managing your career?
Yeah.
If they're not doing things to help you improve your game and get you better, then you're not managed.
So obviously training and development's incredibly important for fighters, and we've talked about that. You guys do things like the press conferences so that your fighters get used to talking before or after fights. What other relationships or initiatives or partnerships has Combat Night established that you feel is fundamental to your success?
I mean, a big part of that is these gyms. I mean, we got a relationship with all these gyms so that, I have fighters all the time that'll hit me up and say, "Hey man, I don't feel like I'm getting this isn't working for me over here, or this isn't working for there, or what do you see in my game that needs to be changed?" Like, hey man, you need to go talk to your coaches. You need to go talk to, if you don't feel like you're getting enough mitt work, it's so funny. These guys get disgruntled and upset about it. So like, I think the biggest, what you're asking is, I think me, and I know that sounds silly, and I'm not trying to like, I don't, but like, I'm going to give you my honest opinion, and I'm going to tell you, your striking sucks. Like, you need more striking work. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Stop diving at the legs. Or, hey, your wrestling's horrible, bro. You just got taken down. Like, he touched your foot and you fell over. So I keep it real with these fighters about what they need to be doing and where they need to be going. As far as, like, you need to be going to a striking coach. You need to find, who, I don't name a gym. I'll let you name a gym.
Fusion Excel.
Okay, if you're at Fusion Excel and your striking sucks, have you hit up Julian and asked him for mitt work?
Yeah.
Have you talked to Julian? Have you talked to Manny, the new Muay Thai coach? Have you went and introduced yourself and said, "Hey, my name's so-and-so and my hands suck"? If you haven't done that, then why are you talking about going somewhere else?
Yeah.
Because your striking sucks and you're not getting the work you need at Fusion. It's like, but you'd be surprised how often that happens. But
well, it goes back to like what I was saying about other promoters, like literally just the act of asking, or, "Hey, I need help here." Just that simple act seems so valuable that that's the one that people don't do. They don't ask.
You gotta communicate. Yeah. That's the most important thing.
Like, they hate me. They don't give me this work. I'm like, you don't go for it. And you don't show that you want it.
It's not, just fighting that's important, but communicating is important. And if you want to have good, successful, and healthy relationships, your girlfriend, your brother, your friends, you got to be able to communicate, and you got to be able to talk about the things that you don't like that are happening and the things that you do like and what you need and what you don't need. That's the biggest thing happening, especially nowadays with like the Gen X and shit and like millennials. I know I'm a millennial, but I want to say I'm a good millennial.
We all are.
But like communication, you're gonna get one chance at this. Like, you only get one shot at being a good professional athlete. You start losing too often, or you're making dumb mistakes. You're making the wrong moves. You're not going to be successful at this. So you have to communicate. You have to communicate and you have to talk. Otherwise, it's not going to work out.
Obviously, more than 10 years Combat Night has been promoting. Where do you see the future of Combat Night? What do you think is, what are the milestones, or what are the things that you're actively looking for in the next few months, years?
We've got a lot of big stuff potentially on the horizon. I'm not one of these guys that's going to make a post about like, "Oh, just wait, next week, you guys."
Yeah.
If it comes together.
Those are my favorite posts because I get so excited.
Yeah, right. And then you forget about it because it never happens.
Right.
I think the future of Combat Night is, what we're worried about right now is the pay-per-view experience, the online experience. You can only put so many people in a building regardless. Like, there's a capacity in every single room you rent. And it gets harder. The bigger the rooms get, the harder the live events get. Guess what? The more pay-per-views get bought, the live event, the production is still the production. There's nothing extra that we have to do. If we have the commentary's there. We have the cameras are there. So for us, we're working on building that and just getting more eyeballs on our pay-per-view. Our YouTube has recently blown up. We went from 3,000 subscribers to like 37,000 subscribers right now over a month. So we're doing really well. Everyone, I mean, you guys both watch. I'm sure you guys follow our page. The content, so content creation is number one goal right now.
It's definitely clear that your content creation over the last maybe year or two has really spiked up. How much of that is a product of the fact that you're now doing like event consulting for other organizations? Do you see things like when you go to other organizations that you go like, oh, I want to, or maybe I guess we should step back there. How did that happen? How did you get involved in consulting for these really, like karate combat? Could we talk about that generally?
Yeah, I want to say this. I think the State of Florida Boxing Commission has kind of referred me a little bit. Like people, they ask them like, hey, who's running shows? Who runs a good show that you like? I know for a fact that Adam was told by one of the commissioners that Combat Night runs a really tight ship, and if you're trying to come to Florida, it would behoove you to have a conversation with them. I know NUCA, the guy at NUCA told me that he had went to all the local events and he was just kind of still taking ideas, and he was gonna run his own event, and then he came to our event and he realized that he can't do what we do, and he was like, so I said I can't copy that. I
Can't beat him. Join him.
He said I can copy he said every other event I went to, I thought, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. This is going to be easy. This is going to be easy. And he said, and then I went to your event, and I was like, oh, this is
a different level.
This is how it's supposed to be done. And he was like, and that's how I got referred for him. He came to my event. At the end of the event, I had no idea he bought a VIP table. I introduced myself. We talked for a little bit. And then at the end of the event, he came up to me and told me who he was and why he was there. And I was like, oh, all right. Got a little
cool.
snake in here. Yeah. But then he asked me to hire me. So that's how that came about. And, absolutely, Paul, I steal ideas from everybody. I don't care how much I think a show sucks and they're not good. Everyone's good at something, at least one thing. Yeah. And I'll find that one thing and I'll steal it.
So, I mean, you've been doing a lot of work for Karate Combat now. What do you think about the concept of it? I think that's very interesting that they're fighting in a different surface than anybody else. They have a very different rule set than anybody else. It's interesting that they're kind of innovating. Have you thought about, taking any of those concepts for Combat Night, or are you do you think they kind of sit on their own?
Yeah, there's not. I haven't seen a lot of crossover of things that I like that I would want to bring into Combat Night as far as like the fighting aspect of it. But their marketing and the way that they go after social media influencers, I really, really think that's smart. It's affordable. It's also, it's not expensive to get, if a guy's making videos and he has 1 million followers for whatever reason, most of these guys like fighting. Most of these guys are like a live event, and so you can treat them to a good time, and it's like, oh, all right, cool. Like I'll come out to your event, and they'll capture content at your event. It's a no brainer. So that idea I've definitely taken from them. I love the idea. I love the concept. I love they just switched to 4-ounce gloves too. I love that. I kind of like the puffies, but I like the 4-ounce gloves now. They added the knees recently, so I like that they're not stuck in their way. They're not stuck on like, oh, this is our original concept. We're not changing it. Yeah, they've evolved and they're continuing to evolve. They've asked my opinion on some things, and I've given them some input, and they're very, very receptive to like, we don't know it all, and we want to get better. I think that Karate Combat can do great things, but that's still yet to be seen. They're doing the blockchain technology. They're working with that. There's so many different things they're doing. It's just going to be, I think what they got to do, they got to win over these old head karate guys. Like, they got the new people, but there's so many old school karate guys that are hating. It's so funny to see. Like, you would think you'd be fucking happy that the
karate's
sport,
being highlighted.
Yeah, karate's finally back on the world stage. It's finally being highlighted again.
And it's real karate. This is real. They are fighting. They are knocking each other out. This is real
and it's
karate.
Respected.
Yes.
That's the thing with karate for so long. I come from an American kickboxing background, which is based out of karate systems. And a lot of those, like you said, old heads, the old school karate is the best. This is as close to old school karate
as you'll ever get.
Yes. It's close in this modern day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the cookie cutter BS belt system giving it out for kids. This is real karate. Yeah. So it's a shot. It's kind of, I don't know. It's people will be people, but it's crazy to me that
what I love that they do, and this is just like the nerd in me, is they like theme their shows, and it stands them out, whether you like it or dislike it. I love it because
I love it.
When we went to that Miami show, I was like in a room that was full of like futuristic views, and I like the idea that like
I will say visually when I went to the event here, it's visually stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like even as a, on when you're watching on TV, yes, but even probably more so in person, it is visually. Like they have big graphic walls that probably don't really show a lot of when you're watching at home. But like I remember people were texting me like, "Are you at Karate Combat right now?" And I was like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Oh, it looks so cool," like, and then. Do you want to do more event consulting in the future? Do you see you doing more of that?
Yeah, that's where I think I enjoy that the most because, I'm getting to outside of combat night. Let me say that outside of combat night and outside of being a dad, I love event consulting because that's problem solving all day.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting to really, really do what I love, and that's the problem solving aspect of it, and having the surprises and the shit that pops up and the things that go wrong and getting to fix it right away. I really, really enjoy event consulting a lot.
I think that's one of the weird things that Rich and I talk about a lot in this industry is that when you're in the martial arts industry, you wear a lot of hats, and sometimes if I would have told you 20 years ago that you'd be doing event consulting for these other organizations, you probably would have not even fathomed what that idea is. Rich always says that he never thought that he'd be promoting events, and I never thought that I would referee anything. I had no interest in it, So I think it's really interesting.
You said it earlier, it's like you found your calling.
Yeah, I used to think I was going to open a gym and be a black belt and teach, and that was going to be my thing.
Well, it's not over yet. You can still do these
things.
things.
Not ever doing that. No. I never want anyone to have to tell me where I'm going to be every day.
Yeah.
I do not want that. Like I did it for I actually did it. A buddy of mine asked me to go in on school with him and be the black belt at the school or whatever. Thankfully, the building wasn't up to fire code and they had to cancel the lease. It was the most miserable 2 weeks of my life. I'm not even gonna lie. Yo, I praise you guys. If you own a gym, if you're running a gym and you're in there every day, and you're dealing with people every day, and you're all the personalities and all that and you have to, right? Like you got to. I praise you guys. You guys are saints, and I don't know how you do it. I don't. And they probably don't know how I do what I do, but I just don't know how you do it. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think, though, this is a lesson I try to push on a lot of guys, especially guys who are getting out of fighting or maybe they're realizing fighting's not for them. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you thought you were going to own a gym. I think that's a majority of martial artists or fighters. They go, when I retire or when I'm done. And I always tell them, keep your mind open. Because, like you said, the calling idea. In this moment, this is what martial arts is pushing you towards. Mm-hmm. Take that opportunity.
Yeah.
Just run with it. Go with it.
Try it.
Yeah. If you fail, guess what? There's other opportunities. There's other roles. There's other things you can get yourself into.
Yeah, fail often. I mean, literally fall flat on your face as many times as you can. Be smart with your money in this process and stuff, but fall on your face all the time. It's that's how you're gonna find out what you truly want to do and where you truly want to be. And definitely, guys, if business is an idea that you want to do in the future, I don't care what the business is, go ahead and start learning business now. You got friends that run businesses, you got gym owners around you. Go talk to them, ask them to help, be a part of it. Don't get paid. Just be happy to be there. Be happy to get the help. Be happy to learn. And get the experience, because that's going to be invaluable in the future. I see so many guys that I got to get paid. No, man, go get the experience, go learn. And once you get the experience, and I did event consulting for multiple people for probably 2 years before I actually felt comfortable enough to charge somebody for what I do.
Yeah.
I did it for free just to see hey, am I good at what I do, or am I just good at combat night? But now, honestly, I think I could run a wedding if I needed to. I could run whatever. I could run any event in the world. There's no event someone could throw at me that I couldn't figure out.
Somebody at home right now is like, well, we are getting married.
Hire me. I want to do event planning. I'll do it. Dead ass. I would do event planning. I think I could crush it.
And make everybody weigh in.
I believe it.
Come over here.
Come here, bride.
Yeah.
So
You
that
gotta
dress
weigh
is
in.
fitting
You gotta
today.
weigh in.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, that being said, is there any future goals? Are you looking ahead 5-10 years? Is there an image in your mind, Combat Night's taking off, it's developing into a better promotion each year? You're obviously adding in more tasks to your workload. Is there a goal that you're looking towards, that you make Combat Night a national promotion? Is there something ahead of time that you're really kind of hoping or working towards?
Combat Night's going to be a national promotion. There's no doubt in my mind about that. we've got the product. We just got to get the eyeballs. We've got to get maybe the money behind it. We got to get the right person behind it. We're currently working with some pretty big names. I don't want to talk about it right now. Again, I'm just one of those people where when it comes together, it comes together.
Yeah.
But I do believe that we'll be a national brand one day, and I don't see myself. I mean, I love running events. I love doing what I do with Combat Night. You know, I got a really cool idea, something I want to do in the future, where we could really almost kind of in a sense consider it franchising the events.
Sure.
But it's in a very unique way that I think will be very successful, and I think will also provide fighters a great opportunity to do something once they're done with fighting. I think it's going to be really successful, and it's just a matter of, you know, doing that first one and making it work. But that's probably my 5 to 10 year plan, is starting to franchise out and working with other athletes and doing things so that they can find a way to make income and, you know, make more money and not have to fight all the time.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say someone's in, I don't know, Mississippi, and they wanted to maybe create their own fight promotion. You could see yourself being the person that gives them the inlay and all of that stuff and teaching them how to grow a successful business in their region.
100%. And I know I could do that. I know without a doubt if somebody was in Mississippi or somebody was in Alabama, wherever, I don't care what the state is, if you wanted to run your own event promotion and you're a fighter and you're an athlete, I know for a fact if you're good at listening, you can be successful.
I think that's really interesting because there's so many people out there that kind of do one show or two shows and then they realize like they don't have the infrastructure, they don't know how to do this, and unfortunately like that was one or two shows, they lose a lot of money and they're like, this isn't for me. And at least to the best of my knowledge, there's really no organization right now that is giving people that infrastructure in that kind of way.
The recipe, yeah. I mean, there's promotions in the state of Florida right now that have reached out to me for multiple times for advice, and I used to give it away for free. And eventually, I was like, "Hey, look, I'm happy to help you. I'll be your event consultant. I'll work with you." And look, and I'll say this. I'll look at the camera when I say it. I don't have competitors. I don't. Not in the state of Florida. There's nobody that competes with us. And I say that to Fight Pass shows, whatever. There's no one competes with us. We do something different. And our recipe, I can give you my recipe. You can't cook like I can cook. So with that being said, like, you know, I'm happy to help. I really am. Like, I'm happy to be a part of other promotions and help them be successful.
Well, you brought up Rise of the Warrior. Well, obviously, they came a little bit before you, and they're just kind of in that one area. And you know, I love Daniel; he's a great guy.
Love Dan. You
guys are now doing like almost like joint productions now. Sometimes, yeah. How did that come about?
You know, me and Dan are longtime friends. We've known each other for 10 years, 11, 12 years since before Combat Night. His son started working for us. His son is helping us with content. We brought him on board. I love Danny. He's like my second kid, my third kid now. And you know, Dan, I thought Dan has such good talent in Fort Pierce. He's seen guys like Charles Rosa come through there. Jillian Robertson came through there. But doing a pro show is a whole nother ball game, right? It's just a whole different animal. And you know, we talked about doing shows together and even visiting other towns, maybe doing, you know, a town outside of any towns we all go to together and doing an event together, because Dan's good at what he does too. If I had to a promoter that if Dan wanted to travel the state, he could travel the state. The dude's good. And I tell him all the time, like, you should do shows outside of Fort Pierce. And he's like, nah, man, I just, you know, I like my people and you know, I'm happy here, fool. I'm happy here. But if he wanted to, Dan could be just as successful as we are at Combat Night. He could do as many events as we do, and he could crush it, but he doesn't want to. But I don't know exactly how it came together. I think I told him that I kept pushing him to do a pro event, and he didn't want to do it. And he was like, why don't you come do it? And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm not coming to do a show in your town. And he's like, no, man, we'll do it together. So we decided to start doing like an annual show. This is our second one that we've done together. Super. I mean, they're big. They're huge out there. I mean, we do put a lot of people in that building.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
I'll be there judging.
And, you know, just like Dan has, you know, I literally took all his sauce in the beginning. I told you guys that. I went to Rise of a Warrior and I took all of his sauce. I was like, all right, they're doing it right. That's what we're going to do it like. And he knows that. And I think he would admit today that, like, I'm trying to give him sauce. Like, I'm trying to, you know, if you look at their social media and their content game, it's changing. They're more active on it. They're doing things on it.
A little different flavoring.
Yeah.
Like you said, they
Oh,
can't
yeah.
cook
Oh,
like
yeah.
you, but they're cooking.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
you know it's cool to see me be able to like kind of give back to the guy that I think really put me on.
Yeah.
So
What do you think that comes from? Because earlier you stated that you went and trained with Cowboy Cerrone early on, and his Banff Ranch is kind of notorious for like, if for those who don't know, like you live there, you train there, you help around the place if Donald needs something.
I help build the training facility that everyone trains at. I help build it.
So do you feel like maybe that early exposure to that mentality of like helping people grow without a monetary kind of reward, do you think that's like translated? Because very similar to that, like you train people out of your house. There's a gym in your house. Some fighters have lived with you in the past. Do you think that's like something that came from that?
I'm sure some of that rubbed off, but I think it's kind of just who I am. I've always been that way. I've I got friends that I've worked for so many of my friends' businesses. Casey Berry will tell you, like, I used to, just because I wanted to learn how to like put wells in or build fences or build decks, I went and worked with him for free. Like I told him, like, I don't want to get paid. Like he tried to give me, I don't want to get paid, Casey. I just want to come out here and learn. Like I think the knowledge is more important. And that's what I honestly, in the sport of martial arts, that's a big problem. Everyone wants to get paid. Everyone wants money. Like, oh, well, what am I going to get paid for that? Well, what do I get for this? And it's like, bro, experience is more valuable than any dollar you can put in my hand. But it's also hard to tell a broke person that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I agree. And, we've talked about this a lot about just jobs like, judging or reffing or even coaching. A lot of the time starting out, everyone who gets started, it's because of their passion.
Yeah.
But there also is a point of like, okay, passion doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
Passion doesn't put food on the
I
plate.
think this is something that we were talking about too, is like it's very hard because like I've been for probably about 2 years now, I've been refereeing, right? And it wasn't something that I was interested in. I never talked to anybody about it. Rich came to me and asked me to judge an event, and I was like, yeah, I can judge an event, whatever. And I actually had like 8 or 9 guys that fought on the event, so every 5 minutes I'd have to be like, yeah, I'm gonna stand over here. And then when the second event came about, Rich was like, well, do you want to referee it? And I was like, I guess. I mean, because Rich is my friend, and I'm like, oh, I want to help Rich, so yeah, I'll referee it, And then, fast forward 2 years later, like I'm flying places to referee.
Yeah.
But like, I'm also like, what should I be asking for financially? And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of. It's hard. Those are hard numbers to find. Where we were like literally Googling, and then we're like, well, this is how much this guy makes, and then I was like, but does he actually make that much money, or is that just what the internet says? Because I have a friend that the internet says he's worth $18 million, but I don't think he's worth $18 million.
Doesn't show.
He's broke all the time, So it's like, I think that is the weird thing about martial arts. And actually, I had an argument with Rob from McDojo Life about this on one of our episodes, where Rob's position was, if you're doing anything, you should always be paid. And my position was like, in martial arts, intrinsically, we have an understanding that like when you're coming up in the ranks, sometimes you are doing stuff for the purpose of learning, and that learning is the payment.
Yeah, and I disagree with Rob as well. I think that if you're doing anything, you should always be getting value.
Yeah.
Which could be pay. For me, I have a scoring. I have 3 things. It's got to hit one of these 3 things. I talk about this often, but it's got to be something I'm passionate about. It has to get 2 out of 3 for me. 2 out of 3. It's got to be something I'm passionate about. It's got to be something I'm getting paid for, or it's got to be something I'm getting notoriety for. So if I'm passionate and notoriety, cool. I don't have to get paid. If I'm getting paid and notoriety, cool. I don't have to be passionate about it. If I'm passionate and I'm getting paid, cool. I don't need notoriety. I'll sit in the back. No one will need to see me. So for me, and I think everyone needs to figure that out for themselves. Like, a friend of mine, Charlie Benham, actually, he made me start getting paid for event consulting, and he made me start getting paid for like stuff like privates, not for fighters. I never charge. My gym is a free gym, and anyone's welcome to come train, whatever. I don't care where you train at. I've had guys on Monday train with me from the Jungle, and then on Tuesday train with me from Fusion, and then on Wednesday from Dark Wolf. I've had guys from all over the city and the state even come and train at my gym.
Yeah, personally, my last fight, I did majority of training at the Guillotine Factory, because you were the only person willing at like 9 p.m. to drill.
Not a dime either.
Yeah.
Side note,
never paid
the
you.
Guillotine Factory is the name for your gym at your home.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Someone's like, the Guillotine Factory. Where is that?
Yeah, what is that?
They're Googling it right now.
So it's, for me, it's like, yeah, you got to have some value. There's got to be some value to whatever it is. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing it. But as long as there's some value, and like you said, if that's experience, and then that to me, that's worth it. Like, hey, because how do you go get a gig being a ref somewhere and get paid for it if you have no proof of experience? Like, well, how many events have you ref? You're like, well, I haven't done it, but I know I'll be good.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that is that thing where it's like, there's this weird thing where you take a risk on somebody, which is some amount of payment in itself, right? I'm taking a risk on you because if you mess this up, you're messing up my business. Yep. And some of it is that you have to be willing to, understand that like you're not getting paid necessarily to do something when you're learning, like, right? I mean, that's the nature of the game,
I think that's, again, it's a super valuable thing for people to understand too, because they kind of wait for opportunities. And like I said earlier, they don't communicate that they want to do these things. I remember I got into judging. I was still living in Vegas, and you hit me up like, hey, you coming back to Orlando anytime soon? Like, we're doing this big show. It'd be cool, like, to have you involved. And then I think it was just like a quick conversation, like, what would you be willing to do? I'm like, oh, I've judged a little bit out here. Cool. Yeah. Let's have you judge.
Yeah.
Oh, you can jump on commentating too. Yeah. Like, and if you're not willing to like communicate and ask for these things, you just don't get the opportunity. So you don't get the experience.
You got it. Communication is key.
Yeah. And if, again, you're doing the experience to get paid, if you're thinking about the payment, you're probably not putting in your best effort for work.
Look, I'm going to tell you a story about Ramsey White real quick, because this, like you said, this is a very common thing, especially in martial arts, especially fighters. Like, they're broke, and and I told you, Charles Ramsey. Yeah, first of all, know your worth. So know right away, like if you're listening to this, know your worth. Know what is an hour of my time worth. What is 2 hours of my time worth? Whatever. Know your worth. But Ramsey White, everybody knows him now. He runs the production for Combat Night, runs pay-per-view, all that good stuff. Started with us for free. Guys, he was recording the whole entire event. He was uploading the entire event to YouTube. This man has 4 kids. He was working for the state of Florida. He was working for the environmental department for the state of Florida. Had a full-time job. Had a wife, 4 kids. He worked the events for free. Then, for like at least five or six, maybe even more than 5 or 6 events, he got paid $150. Then he got paid $300 for probably 10 to 15 events. So
at this point, he hasn't paid the amount you haven't paid him the amount that it's cost for his equipment.
No way.
Yeah.
I haven't paid the amount it cost for his equipment, his travel. He was going to Jacksonville for $300.
Yeah.
And recording the whole fight, bringing a crew with him to hold cameras and do everything.
Commentating at the same time.
We didn't have commentating back then.
Oh, okay.
But he did all these things, right? I won't tell you what Ramsey makes right now, but I can tell you it's a whole lot more than what it was. And the only reason Ramsey's making that is because he proved his worth.
Yeah.
I remember the first email he sent me, I think he was at $500, and he sent me this email, and it was like, bro, it was like bullet point of all these things that, like, okay, this is what I'm done. He added commentary. He added this. He added extra camera angles. He did this and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm halfway through the email, and I'm like, I literally like scrolled to the bottom because I knew what was going to be at the bottom. The bottom was, I need to get paid more money. And I had no leg to stand on.
Yeah.
I called him and I said, all right, we're going to double your pay.
He had made a case that was so like bulletproof that there was no way to argue that.
Couldn't argue it with him, but he started for $0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now he's making, he doesn't work for the state anymore. He works for himself now. It's his production company. It's Ramrod Productions. It's his company, and we subcontract him through Combat Night. So this man has literally built a company for himself. He has taught his children that you don't have to work for the man. You don't have to have an 8-to-5 son, daughter. You can do your own thing. He's providing his family with invaluable experiences. He's traveling the state of Florida, enjoying himself, watching fights all the time on the weekends, and it's just his weekends. He's working during the week too, doing stuff, uploading stuff and doing things, but his time freedom. Yeah. Now imagine if he had said to me that very first day when I called him and he said, all right, I need $1,000 an event.
Yeah.
There would be no Ramsey White right now. And he would
couldn't
not
have done it.
He would be still working for the state of Florida, probably. Yeah. His kids would not be getting the experiences they're getting. So you just think about that in itself, and it's like, yo, that's invaluable, and it just makes sense to, if you're not if you're not good at something and you haven't done it a lot and you need some experience, do it for free.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Well, that's like fighting, right? Like, go amateur. If you don't like it, you don't have to go pro.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why one of the reasons why I started the IKF Point Muay Thai around here, because I know some of these guys are great in the gym. The second they step in the ring, that experience crushes them.
Yep.
So, I had a conversation with one of a guy that fought in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. That's in his 40s, and he lost. And he had messaged me afterwards, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got knocked out." And I was like, "Hey man, this is a young person's game. You know, like you fought a 23-year-old. Like, you know, this is a good opportunity for Point Muay Thai."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, I never really thought about that." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, you got to know, got to know where you're headed."
Yeah, and if you don't take those experiences and roll with them, then you'll never know, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful you started the IKF, because I truly do believe, like, just like Combat Night has elevated the sport of MMA in Florida, I believe that you guys will elevate it even further. Like, I really do. I believe that, because you're going to give guys the chance to get in there and feel the jitters in front of, a much smaller crowd, a much different environment. And, the last thing you want to do is go, if you've never competed or like been in an athletic competition before, and you jump in the Combat Night cage on a pro event with 3,000 people in the room, and the
it's
lights
quite a
are
jump
on you.
From training in the gym to that.
I've had this conversation a couple times where I've talked about the fact that early on when I was coaching, when I was a head coach, and I was making the mistake of, like, I'd have guys fight on Combat Night. They had never even been to a show. Not as a fighter, but they had never walked.
As a fan.
They had never gone in and they had watched the UFC. Maybe they hopefully had watched some Muay Thai on television, and then they fought at Combat Night. That's a hard jump, and they'd be like so overwhelmed. And I'd be like, "Why is this guy that overwhelmed?" I'd be like, "Oh, he's never even been here before."
Yeah.
It's not that he's never fought before. He's never even seen the venue before,
Yep.
and that's why I kind of like, started making my guys go to shows. Like, hey, there's a show. You need to go. You need to go watch the show. Yep. If this is something you ever think you need to do, you need to see it first.
And it's funny too, man. I have some guys who will tell me, and I respect this. They'll say, "Hey, man, I'm not ready for Combat Night," and I try to tell them, like, oh, fair, very fair, and they'll say, "I'm going to go fight for XYZ show because it's whatever," but don't do that to yourself either. Okay, if you don't go fight for the show that you know is trash, because you want to get experience, because you're still not getting the right experience. Like, you're still not getting the experience. Go fight for a show that's well put together, like the IKF PMT. Go grapple in submission grappling series, where you're going to get that feeling of, like, the jitters and, like, the energy and the people in the room and all those things. Like, don't shortcut yourself and go fight for a crappy promotion and get a shitty experience just because you're scared of the bright lights at Combat Night. No, do the right thing. Go sign up for an IKF. Fill that out. Go sign up for a submission grappling series. Fill that out. Still, you deserve a good experience. You deserve to be treated the right way. You deserve to enjoy yourself at whatever you put the time and the work in.
I think the reason that a lot of fighters are maybe intimidated by Combat Night is that every matchup, even a debut matchup, is going to be a fair matchup. And let's admit there are other organizations where you get one guy coming out of a team that's fighting, he has coaches, and then you have another guy that has not trained, anywhere, and it's a very unfair matchup. But I think you, as the fighter, if you're training legitimately, why would you even want to fight that guy to start off with?
You shouldn't want to fight
right?
that
Like
guy
that's not anything works against someone that knows nothing.
Yep.
It's giving you no experience that's worthwhile. It's giving you no data. We don't, at IKF PMT, we don't have guys that, like, it's minimum. You have to have a coach. Somebody has to show up with you and say that they support you. And but I think the other point too, though, is that when you're fighting in some of these other organizations, your safety is more. It's you need to be aware of the fact that you might go to a show that's a smaller show. Your safety is not a primary concern, right? Because we had not to talk trash about anybody. I'm not going to name drop anybody, but we've had people that came to us and were like, "Oh, I fought in so and so," and then found out later that they didn't have insurance. Yeah,
you ain't never gonna have that Combat Night, guys. I promise you that.
That's a real thing,
and that's a real thing. People I know, I've talked to promoters. And they've asked me, "Hey, so have you ever, like, just like not got insurance for? No, not a chance, my guy. That's just not a. It's not. It's my family's livelihood. If you know, and that's what I always remind people. Like at the end of the day, this is my family's livelihood.
Yeah.
So my morals in this sport are ironclad because the last thing I want is food to be taken out of my family's mouth.
Yeah.
And you know, you got to ask yourself if the promotion, you know, doesn't have tape ringside, doesn't have this, or doesn't have whatever you name it. There's something off about the event, or they're not putting out fight posters, or they're horrible at promoting it. They're doing these things wrong. Like, what else aren't they doing behind the scenes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Is like, what else aren't they doing behind the scenes? Make sure that you are being smart with your career. Again, it's a business. So like, you know, whoever you associate yourself with, if run with dogs, you get fleas. That's how it is, man.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. That's how life is.
Do you ever consider, because I've been pretty much, I think it was like Combat Night 3 or Combat Night 4. It's like the first one I saw. I think I fought on like Combat Night 5. So I saw like the very beginning, and I've been at other promotions that are no longer with us, you know,
Yeah.
rest in peace, all those promotions. But do you ever consider like the impact you've made in the state of Florida, how events have changed? Because I've noticed a big change. We don't do outdoor events anymore. We don't see shows on you know, baseball fields, stuff like that used to be commonplace. Now it's like every promotion has to have a nice venue. It's just a standard, because Combat Night, everywhere they go, they provide nice venues. The way fighters are you know, treated.
Yeah.
And I still see, like, in your shows, like, an evolution, things get slightly better and slightly better. But do you ever consider those, like, impacts that you guys have made? I know you probably don't go to as many other shows.
Yeah.
Because you're always
When's the last
at
time
your
you
own
went to
show.
somebody else's show and we're like, oh,
But obviously you hear through the grapevine
Yeah.
people's experiences.
Yeah.
Yo, I used to, honestly, guys, if I'm free and there's a show happening and they'll have me, like, I'll go to every show. I love going to events. And I have friends or fighters that I know that are probably fighting on most shows, so I don't have any problems. Believe it or not, I'm not everyone's favorite promoter. So I'm not necessarily welcome at some events anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, it sucks because I really do. I enjoy the sport that much and I love it that much. I haven't really thought about the impact that I've had, to be honest with you, Rich. I'm just like nose to the grindstone and just continue to grind and work.
Sure.
It's been brought up a lot more recently in the past like 2 years. A lot of fighters and a lot of athletes, especially guys that have moved on from us, come and tell me about, like, man, just you don't realize what you did. Like, you know, I do realize it in Jacksonville though, because I just know that I think those guys would have made it regardless. But I know without us being there and having those consistent shows to fight and learn and get better and improve, they might not have, you know, I've seen athletes get taken advantage of a lot. I've seen that happen a lot. And I just don't know they'd had the same experience and they would have had that same, you know, they would be there right now. So I don't really think about it that much, to be honest with you, but I do like the fact that I love seeing somebody biting off our style, because I bite off everybody's style. Like,
Sure.
I told you guys earlier, I steal it. If it's in the good, I like it. I don't care what show it is. If the promoter of that show hates me, they're going to hate me more because I'm going to steal their idea.
I think that just like, that's like a martial arts mentality anyways. Like,
It should be, but
no coach has ever invented one thing.
Yeah. Nobody created it.
It's always an
Yeah.
evolution of stealing.
yep.
I think obviously, like, we're getting up there in time, so we're start heading down here and winding down. But we're primarily a striking show. A lot of strikers listen, so I have to ask you a loaded question.
Go ahead.
When will we see a professional Muay Thai or kickboxing show on Combat Night? Is that something that we can one day hope for?
A whole event?
No, just a single fight.
We've already had one.
Okay, when?
Brandon Waters versus Matt Noss,
All right,
Jacksonville,
all right.
Florida, April 30th, 2022.
All right.
Like, I had that date just like that.
Yeah.
I'm a fucking nut when it comes to this shit. There's
When
no
are we
promoter.
gonna see? When are we gonna see another?
You know, we were supposed to have one on this last Jacksonville card.
Okay.
Brandon Waters got injured. He was going to fight Langston Sykes.
Yeah.
But soon. I love guys. If you're primarily strikers, you got pro Muay Thai guys, pro kickboxing guys, hit us up. You know, we have a great amateur series right now. I feel like we did amateur shows on for MMA for like 5 or 6 years before we did our first pro event, and right now we're around the 4 or 5 year mark of really heavily investing in the Muay Thai and the kickboxing arts inside of our cage. So I think within the next year, you'll see more often. You'll see those guys. The Jungle has an amazing kickboxing and Muay Thai program that they put together over there, and they're amateurs or some of our title holders. And I see guys like Chris Galiga. I could see him being one of our a pro fighter here in the near future.
Just recently, you guys, he was one of your champs, Michael Young, right?
Michael
out of
Young.
Tampa.
That's actually,
Out of
he'll probably
Kaizen.
be the next guy.
Okay.
Vince over at Kaizen has been hounding us about getting him either a small glove Muay Thai fight, a kickboxing Muay Thai. He don't care. But so Michael Young will probably, and he'll probably be in Tallahassee, to be honest with you. He'll probably be fighting really soon. But yeah, I mean, I love, if there's one promotion that I steal the most from, it's probably one championship. Because they're doing it right. Their content creation online is great. Their social media stuff is good. And then the fights they're putting together and allowing the small glove Muay Thai and that kind of stuff. We're doing it in the amateurs now too. So I think soon, man, and I'm not even opposed to doing an entire Muay Thai card. Like,
really,
honestly, if we could get together and get a, I would probably do amateur first, but I would do a pro as well. It matters. We gotta have the bodies. We gotta have the people.
Yeah.
And I think another year or two we'll have that.
I think historically, Florida, at least as I always viewed it, has been like an MMA state, and we're starting to see a bigger resurgence in kickboxing and Muay Thai.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, my first Muay Thai fight, I've talked about it here on the show. My first Muay Thai fight, I was supposed to do MMA on combat night, and then the opponent didn't bring his blood work, which was required.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh man, my fight fell through, and I remember Richard Cox convincing the guy, like, well, we can do Muay Thai, you don't need blood work at the time, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa, that benefits me because I'm a striker. I know he's coming from a grappling gym. And then from that moment, I was like, oh, like, that is an option. You can do kickboxing. You can do Muay Thai. But in Florida, it was always MMA promotion, MMA.
It's funny, I guarantee no promotion would admit this, but a lot of promotions were kind of snobs about putting kickboxing or Muay Thai on their cards. And I was like, yo, if you want to fight, we want you. I don't care if you want to fight kickboxing or Muay Thai. If you want to fight, I want you to fight for us. So we started doing that. And then next thing you know, every other promotion is like, oh, okay, well, if Combat Night's doing it, we'll do it.
It's interesting that the model now, one championship's kind of gone to these mixed events, which is more what is representative of the regional scene is we have mixed events, and I think that's super entertaining from a one championship perspective where one's a kickboxing, then you have Muay Thai, then you have MMA, then you have like submission grappling.
I think it breaks up the monotony too of like MMA is super exciting. Obviously, it's one of the most dynamic combat
you don't have
sports.
to lie on the show, Rich.
But there's aspects of it that could make a boring fight, and if you get one or two of those in a row, you're like, man, I don't want a third or a fourth. You throw a kickboxing Muay Thai fight in there.
Yeah.
One, it's a faster fight, and then two, it is a little more exciting a lot of times because it is just stand up.
I had a coach in South Florida recently who he kind of barked at me because he had 3 guys doing kickboxing, and he said. He saw the lineup and he was like, why is my guy the fourth to last fight of the night? And I was like, because he's like 4-1 and he's fighting a guy who's 3-1. That's an exciting fight. And he was like, oh man, he's like, everyone else down here puts all the kickboxing at the beginning of the night.
He wanted to get out of there.
And I was like, well, I'm not everybody else, bro.
Yeah, you do.
Sorry, buddy.
I will say, compared to the other promotions who do add all those mixed combat sports, you guys build the card to where it's like when I come and judge, I get the fight lineup. I'm like, nice. Like they highlight some of these matches.
Yeah.
And of course, like if it's debuts, they're lower on. But some of these guys are MMA fighters turned kickboxers. So then you get to kind of see.
And again, they can have the recipe, but you don't know how to cook it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like there's little details like knowing how to put the fight card together, knowing who to put where, and these things like they matter. We literally. If you really look at a fight card, we bring people up to a point, we bring them back down a little. We're bringing back up, we're bringing back down. We're bringing back up, and it's like it's not just the last 4 fights are all fire. No, like we might put a really fire fight for the first fight of the night because we know it's going to get the crowd going.
Yeah. Typically, a lot of promotions, they save the heavyweight fights, and then you notice like yours are kind of staggered in there.
Yep.
And that's smart because it's again like everyone wants to see a heavyweight fight because there's going to be a knockout.
Yeah.
That's what you always think. It's not always the case.
Yep.
But just the anticipation.
It's very boring.
Yeah, but just the anticipation of like, these big boys are walking out.
Debut heavyweight fight might be a lot of.
Or it's the opposite. Where I mean, there's some heavyweights that are coming up now that I've watched on Combat Night that
Jackson
are just
Stanford.
so exciting. Jackson's a big one.
I love watching
the
that
homeboy
kid
who just
fight.
got the big highlight head kick, overhand knockout. over
Javier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a guy.
He's gonna probably be a welterweight one day.
Justin Hensley.
He's fighting for the 205 belt this weekend, so you're gonna get to see Javier fight this
Fantastic.
weekend.
Nice.
I love that.
I love those him and his brother. You know, it's funny. His little brother's a 25er.
Great. Yeah.
It's like
Sandwiches are delicious, man.
I mean,
You
he's
know,
got the
like-
height. He's got the height of a 25er compared to some of his other.
I know,
yeah.
man, but he slings them, bro. He slings them like no
He does
other.
the right moves. He's
Yeah.
making good choices.
Yep.
All right, guys. Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Oh, man, thanks for having
you
me.
know, we have been actively like pursuing you to come on the show because this, you know, our show is all about, you know, educating the coaches, educating fighters, educating the people involved in our industry, and you know, I think that. You know, it's so invaluable to have someone that's, you know, an OG of the game, but also like you've worn a lot of hats in this game. So it's like I've always enjoyed having conversations with you like off the radio or off the mic, you know. So thank you so much. I know that Rich probably hassled you a lot to get on the show. So
I tried.
yeah.
Slip it in when I can.
Yeah. Hey man,
I'm happy to make it happen, man. It's just like, you know, I mean, you look at me right now, disheveled, like I got beard growing, hair everywhere because I got an event this weekend. I only get haircuts right before events. It's been a crazy year, man. I'm happy it's finally over.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was happy to be here too, man. I really, guys, I enjoyed talking to you guys. I feel like I was just sitting in my man cave talking to Rich, honestly, because we do this. He'll come over probably once a month or once every 2 weeks, and we just talk about shit.
Yeah.
Like we talk about what's happening in the sport. And
This is why I bought the portable kit, because now we can go places, we can travel. We did
There
an
you go.
episode from Myrtle Beach, so
nice.
all right, man. Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Appreciate it, guys.